What's up? It's your good pal Greg Sestero, your favorite Gattacan citizen. Gattaca is one of my favorites. You know, I worked on it. I was 17 years old. I wasn't even allowed to be there. But I was on there for a week, and I got befriended these two on-set producer guys who had me on even longer. I got to do a bunch of scenes and walk around and meet Ethan Hawke and get invited to like a private party with Ethan Hawke and Thurman, which is where they met, of all things, which is kind of crazy. I heard stories on that set about Kevin Spacey. This is 1996. And it was one of those things I just, know what was going to come of it. It was a new writer-director. And actors are funny, extras. They're always trying to get in front of the camera. So I had no idea what the deal was. I had a weird situation that happened there. I got invited to like a party in LA, and I was 17, and then kind of went weird. So but we filmed at the Frank Lloyd Wright building in Marin County, California. Served as a space center. But it's just a really great, beautiful story. Anyway, keep watching movies. Keep embracing those. The 90s were such a great time for movies, so keep supporting those films. We need original material. And get out there, enjoy life. Each day is a gift. You start every day with $100,000 worth of life experience, so enjoy it. And worst case, don't go out there. Gattaca for life. What a story.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. I really appreciate all support. You guys are awesome. Before we jump into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. We've got all of our episodes and interviews if you want to listen there. We just dropped a new interview with Lauren Marie Taylor from Friday the 13th Part 2. Definitely check out our website for all of our interviews. It's just a lot easier, more streamlined finding them there instead of scrolling through 200 plus episodes on like iTunes or Spotify, etc. So check out our website for our episodes and interviews. We also have our store and Shan store attached. We got some new merch, some new apparel, new t-shirts, and she's got her Etsy page attached with all of her tumblers. They're selling like hotcakes. Definitely check those out. We also have like our blog, and we have some think pieces up, and we have all of our social media links. We try and stay very active on all of the social media links, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Definitely follow us, like us, subscribe us, all that good stuff on there. We ask, questions. We post comments. We do a lot of giveaways. We always read all of our comments and questions on the episode, so definitely check that out. We love interacting with the fans. We've gotten really close to a lot of people all over the world, and it's pretty awesome. And the last thing we'll shout out before we get into tonight's film review is our Patreon. It's called Blood Donors. We have two different types. One-time donation. If you love a movie and you want us to review it, etc., check that out. Or we have the traditional monthly reoccurring kind that really helps us, as we like to say, just pay the bills because, none of the money goes in our pocket. We understand it's a really tough time economically for a lot of people, but it does take a big burden off of us. It helps us pay for, the software we use to make YouTube videos. It pays for our SoundCloud. It pays for what we record on, et cetera, et cetera. So really, you're just helping us out. So we really appreciate that. We're going to close tonight. Tonight, we're closing out Sci-Fi Month. His brother Dustin's pick. You want to announce your pick, brother?
Yeah, man. I went with 1997's Gattaca. When Sci-Fi Month was first kicked around, I had a few movies I wanted to choose. This one was one of them. I wanted to choose Butterfly Effect because I think that's a great movie. I wanted to choose The Fly because that's a classic movie. But ultimately, I decided, we're going to do The Fly, regardless, because that movie deserves its own episode, like without it happening to be a theme month. So I threw a poll out on Twitter, and actually Butterfly Effect won, but I decided, you know what? Let's just go with my heart. Damn the polls. Let's go with what I want to do because this is my pick. And Ethan Hawke, it's no secret. He's the GOAT. He's the best actor of all time. So this is a movie that I first saw in 2000, God, I don't know, like 2004, 2003. in Coach Collins' classroom in Loudon High School. He was my chemistry teacher. He showed this movie to us to really, talk about eugenics and DNA and all that good stuff. And it didn't hit with me at the time. I didn't care about this, man. But I went back and watched it, and as my love and appreciation for Ethan Hawke developed over the years, and not just Ethan Hawke. When you talk about Alan Arkin, when you talk about Uma Thurman, when you talk about Maya Rudolph, who this is her first movie ever. The casting is incredible, and it's just one of those movies that when I heard we're doing a sci-fi month, I don't know when we would ever possibly be able to talk about this movie again. So I was like, you know what, let's do it. I'm gonna make Nico watch something he's probably not gonna like. I'm glad I did.
All right. Well, I'm glad you ended with that because it's not personal, but I wasn't a big fan of the movie, honestly. Dustin, like me and him have had like a history of hating on each other's movies, but this one, it's not personal. I mean, he gave Donnie Darko a lot of love, and I appreciated that. I'll touch on it more in my ending, my ending rating and all that, but I feel like the movie's runtime didn't justify what all happened in the movie. I feel like it was way too long for what happened. But I'll touch on all that at the very end when we give all of our main thoughts. I don't want to repeat myself too much. Overall, great acting, looks good, but it didn't hit for me. Brian, you want to go next, brother?
It's less than 2 hours, Nico.
Okay.
So, Dustin, you mentioned Maya Rudolph. Now, I tried to find her. Was she the nurse with the mask on? So,
bro, I got to be honest with you. I don't know because
she's a delivery nurse.
Looked for her too.
The nurse with the mask on.
The one that had the mask on. Okay, all right. So
I looked for her too, and then I saw in the trivia this is her feature film debut, and I was like, I was even looking for her and I couldn't find her. So.
Well, I'm on your team with this one this week, Dustin. I loved this movie. I'm actually very disappointed it took me so long to even see this now, but it came out whenever I was in 8th grade. I know it bombed at the box office and has become something of a cult classic now, but I guess it just kind of fell through the cracks for me. But with that said, I'm very glad you picked it because I thought it was phenomenal. It was very intriguing to me, almost like a character study of some sorts. And I know Nico hates the 80s and the 90s. I'm just fucking with him. But he does. But this is what I miss about the 90s, like especially that, studios would take a chance on a movie like this and actually pour some money into it. Whereas nowadays, I don't think this movie would get made. Mm-hmm. I think it has some amazing shots in it. But I will say, I didn't care for the soundtrack as much as I wish I would have. Not all throughout, but definitely some parts. But we'll get into that. Sure. I want to leave you with a quote from Ethan Hawke himself. He said, "When I was doing the film, it really felt very strongly that this is a film that will last. Ultimately, I think it was really high budget art film." Do I sound like Ethan Hawke? I don't know.
No, you sound like Mitch Hedberg, actually.
It is. It becomes stairs. My bad.
I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So he says, what did he say? Okay. Ultimately, I think it was a really high budget art film. More and more, there's no place for that, and it's a travesty. I feel like we've lost room in the movie theater for a whole genre of pictures. They can't make it anymore. Also, by the way, amazing poster art. And again, just such a great concept, in my opinion. Good pick, Dustin.
Thank you.
Okay. By the way, great to be back, everyone. Okay. Whew. Well, I got to say, I'm going to let you all in on a little secret, so lean close.
50-50.
I have never seen this film until last week.
Oh.
And then I watched it, and then I watched it again this afternoon in preparation for this review. And I got to tell you, I'm sorry, Nico, because you're an idiot. This movie is awesome. Oh. What in the world? Okay, so let me start by saying this. Some of the positives that you guys have already touched on here. This cast is great. Ethan Hawke is phenomenal. To me, who steals the show is Jude Law and his portrayal of Jerome and Eugene. I think he's fantastic in this film. His facial expressions really just give away pain and like hidden pain. It's a very intriguing role for Jude Law to me. Uma Thurman is great. This movie has fucking Gore Vidal in it, my man. Like, come on, what a great This cast is awesome. Tony Shalhoub makes an
Tony
appearance. My
Shalhoub.
man Monk. Come on, dude.
This is our
Alan
second
Arkin.
Tony Shalhoub movie.
It
Shout out
is.
13 Ghosts.
That's right. This movie is significantly better than that piece of crap.
Relax.
I'm just saying, it is.
I mean, it is, but you didn't have to say it. It was understood. That was unnecessary bullying.
Alan Arkin, really, really great. So on and so on. Just a great cast. Love the way the movie looks. It looks, for being made in '96, I'm assuming this movie looks futuristic. The lighting that it has when people are outside, it's just very different. It's a very different feel. And Brian, you mentioned something that I really wanted to touch on, so I might as well go ahead and touch on it at the top. This movie feels like it's from a different time in a good way, because we get a lot of processed food movies now, and it's not a knock against anybody making money. It's not a knock against necessarily anybody in the industry. It's just a business. And to me, we get a lot of fast food movies, fast food TV, and that's a shame, because a lot of stuff looks the same, it sounds the same, it has the same themes. This movie does so many different things. It's kind of a lost art. It touches on eugenics, genetics, classism, racism. It touches on a lot of different themes that I think are not even subtext. They're just talking about them out in the open. And I think that's something we're kind of missing when it comes. Now, one thing I want to address, and Dustin already owned up to it in the group chat, so I will say this movie is not horror in any way. Yeah. But it is a damn good film. And so I'm glad that you picked it, and I'm glad that I watched it, because to me, this movie isn't what I think of when I think sci-fi, partly because we're living in a time where CRISPR exists. And so some of that stuff you can kind of do already. Not all, but some of that stuff, the science is starting. It's funny, the science has kind of started to catch up to this movie just a smidge, and that makes it, to me, that almost classifies it in the horror genre, because that brings some existential dread to the situation. So I'm excited to talk about it, man. What a film. I'm not going to lie, the first time I watched it, you guys will be proud of me. I watched it on normal speed. I didn't do 1.5, even though that's a Netflix option. Now, this afternoon, I watched it on 1.5 speed. But the first time I saw it, I said, I'm going to give this movie the right chance. And I did. And I'm glad that I did. Man, just a really different movie, very of its time, but also very ahead of its time. And I'm excited that we get to review it.
That has to be one of the best flips since Hogan and the NWO. I'm sorry, you're an idiot, Nico. I agree with everything.
But also, great. I got real close to the mic, so I'm going to move back because people in the iTunes comments complain. So let me just move back.
No, but I do want to touch on something, Mike. You mentioned how I said in our group chat that, after I rewatched it this time, I was like, you know what? Did I stretch it a little bit too much here? But, then I watched it again. I was like, honestly, I don't think so, because we watched some movies that I've been openly critical of. Like, this is very much so pushing it for horror. I think this movie was tense enough. Like, even without the themes that you touched on, Mike, like, it's tense enough with the whodunit and the twist that we get at the very end. I think it's close enough to where it's not any more outside the realm of possibility than some other movies we've talked about. So I was a little bit too critical, but I agree. It's borderline at best.
All righty, y'all ready to jump into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. The film starts with Ecclesiastes 7:13 on the screen and a quote from Willard Galen. Opening credits roll and title card to a nice bit of music. We see Vincent shaving and scrubbing his chest and brushing his hair. I wrote down Jerome at first, but I erased it and changed it to Vincent because, God damn it, he goes back and forth. So he's Vincent to me, by God.
There you go.
He now takes a urine sample and attaches it to his leg and puts a false blood sample in his fingertip. We see Vincent driving now, and we're now in the not-so-distant future. He's on an escalator and gives a blood sample, as does everyone else. He's working on his computer and uses his fancy dust blower. Director Joseph compliments his clean workstation. He compliments his flight plan, not one error in a million keystrokes. He asks if the plan has been approved. Vincent is told he leaves in a week, and he has a substance test coming up. Vincent sets up DNA all over the station. Vincent gives a urine sample right in front of the doctor, and his equipment is complimented. The doctor tests the urine and it's valid. Jerome says he'll tell him at the end of the week if he's excited. Irene congratulates Vincent and asks how many launches are in a day. She says he's the only one who watches all of them. If you're going to pretend like you don't care, don't look up, she says, and walks away. Vincent narrates he's about to take a 1-year mission to Titan. He says Jerome is blessed with a genetic quotient second to none. I am not Jerome Morrow, he says. He gives his birth history, and we see his parents in the back of a car and now in the delivery room. A nurse names off the percentage probability of all these bad medical conditions, and he has a 30-year life expectancy. He's named Vincent Anton. We see little Vincent, and he's treated for every cut like it's a life or death situation. Vincent's parents are now with a geneticist to have another baby. They want Vincent to have a brother. They ask to leave a few things to chance. That's how Anton came into the world, worthy of their father's name. Vincent and Anton are on the beach, and he narrates he knew something different flowed through his veins. Vincent cuts his thumb on a shell, and they play chicken. Whoever could swim out furthest without getting scared and turning around. Anton always won. He was a superior swimmer. As long as Vincent could remember, he could dream of going to space. His goals didn't change growing up to his parents' dismay. His mom says with his heart condition, you got to be realistic. His dad says the only way he'll see the inside of a spaceship is if he cleans it. Vincent says it's illegal to discriminate as he walks in to give a urine sample. We now see Vincent and Anton give their last swim against each other. Every time Anton tried to pull away, he saw me right beside him. Anton calls his name, and Vincent turns around to save him from drowning. He swims him back to the shore. Vincent rips his picture out of the family portrait and leaves the house. The next few years, he moved around a lot following work cleaning toilets. Welcome to Gattaca, gentlemen. He and the others are handed their cleaning materials, and Vincent watches as the ship flies. He says he's never been so sure of how far he was from his goal until he stood right beside it. He's cleaning a room now and sits at a computer and looks around in amazement. He plays on a keyboard until another janitor walks in. Vincent jokes, saying, if the glass is clean, it'll be easier for you to see me on the other side. And that's the opening set of scenes I got, Brian. What'd you think?
Very visually interesting opening credits. It almost had alien or species vibes with the way that the different letters faded in. The letters that stood out were, of course, the ones from the title Gattaca. But again, very visually interesting to me, at least. Again, this is just such an intriguing and interesting concept. Like, it almost plays out like a Black Mirror episode if I'm trying to liken it to anything. But huge credit to writer and director Andrew Niccol. Is making me ask real world questions, like deep ass questions. Like, if I had the option as a parent to give your child a genetic advantage in this godforsaken world, would you? I don't know, but the questions the movie makes you ask and the story arcs are very deep, I feel like, in this movie. Like, the fact that this society is recognizable, yet it's not, and has this like original take on just class and society as a whole. It's just science fiction, I think, is just unique in the fact that it allows you to tackle these kinds of themes that not many, I mean, if any other genres are really able to do. Kind of a peek behind the curtain. I apologize to the guys this morning for picking Sci-Fi Horror Month just because I was looking at the numbers earlier and it didn't seem like the episodes were doing as well as others had. And I get that. But sci-fi has always, I think, allowed me to, personally escape into a world or our future in this case that feels like fantastical, kind of in a unique way that other genres don't. But anyway, regardless, I love the 1950s type, aesthetic in this world that Niccol's created. And props to Vincent. I know he doesn't get the genetic advantage right off the bat, but come on, my guy. Your dad is Casey Jones from 1990 Ninja Turtles, and your mom is Zach's mom from Kindergarten Cop, and Carolyn from Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. What can you do right? Come on. And I touched on the cinematography kind of in my opening, but here in these flashbacks, that whole, how it has that yellowish tint that kind of gives you that subtle push that this is like in the past. I thought that was a tremendous choice by Niccol, I think. And, so I think this set of scenes is just tremendous. You're setting Vincent up as an underdog. You immediately can relate to him. Something that I'm not sure that you could have gotten from like just an adult Ethan Hawke. because like the way a grown-up Vincent is presented at the start of this set of scenes to the end, you have a completely different perception of him because of this well-written flashback bit here. I have to shout out the motherfucking legend Ernest Borgnine as well as Caesar. His lines are tremendous. Maybe my favorite character in the movie. My only nitpick, and I'll say it here, and I won't say it the rest of the way, but Michael Nyman's score, I know it's beloved, but it was just either too loud, overused, or like too majestic. I don't know. Something just to me I didn't love. Like, I'm sorry, I can't relate. I can't really go into more depth than that, but it just didn't resonate with me. Otherwise, fantastic opening.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the opening credits. Um, it's interesting because when you think sci-fi, or my dumb monkey brain immediately goes to something like space, and this movie has those themes as well. But this movie is, they kind of opens with the ocean a little bit. That blue hue, with the white lettering, it kind of makes you think of the sea and stuff like that. And when, again, first time watching it, you're like, well, what is this? Like, I went into it pretty blind. I watched the trailer. That's about it. But I mean, I thought, man, what stunning visuals that this opens with. And this is just the credits. And I thought, wow, okay, here we go. And I love this backstory. You mentioned the concept being just so intriguing. And it is. It's something that right off the bat, I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to really like this film because of the topics that it's trying to explore. And again, I mentioned in my opening, some of this is topical now where it wasn't in 1997. You've got things like I mentioned, CRISPR and other machines that are kind of heading that route where this question's being asked. And it's being asked in a way that's real. It's not science fiction anymore. And I know that's why a lot of, professors, in academia think, hey, you guys should probably watch this film. It's a pretty important film to them. And so I think right off the bat, it's making you question everything you ever thought. You don't really want to play God, but you also want to give your kids the best chance to survive and have the best life. And again, just some existential dread. Right off the bat here, you're like, man, what would you do? Because it's almost like they thought one way, then they had one son that had flaws. And the only reason that just because he has these percentage chances of having issues doesn't mean he's going to have these issues. But because we have the technology to know right off the bat what he's predisposed to, we think of them as lesser than. And so they try again with another son. And I think that dynamic is interesting. And here comes the tie-in with the sea and the swimming and all that stuff. I think those scenes are great. Really lays the foundation for what's to come later. Some of the quotes about, swimming and all that stuff ties in here. I really think that's well done. And the time that Vincent finally wins kind of proves my point in where, yeah, he's predisposed to have all these health complications, but that doesn't mean that he actually has them. Some of the percentages were like 40%, 30%, as I read it off the top. And so I think, it kind of shows that this logic is flawed in a way. And we get that at the end too. I don't want to spoil anything, but he leaves and he gets a job as a janitor. By the way, I've been a janitor. It sucks. Do 0 out of 10. Do not fucking recommend. But at this place, it looks kind of cool. It looks like it'd be a little bit better. That he finally got there. I love the way he ends it here, though, where he says, the line about cleaning the glass and all that. I think that's very clever. It's a very well written line. I love this opening set of scenes. Not a whole lot happens, but it does a tremendous job of setting a base level for our story. We really know the brother dynamic. We got that, and we are plopped into this new society where we know everyone's genetics. And that is it's just such an interesting concept that I never would have even thought of. So well done. I'm hooked right off the bat just by the story alone.
Yeah, so the opening set of scenes does a great job of setting this backstory. First of all, when you watch it for the first time and you see him and you see how meticulous he is and you see him preloading the blood into this fingertip. It's like, what the hell? What's going on? Like, that's how I was. I remember watching that set of scenes as a sophomore in high school and being like, what the hell are you showing us right now? Because he didn't tell us what it's about. He just told us it's about DNA. So he put the movie on and turned the lights off, and we were on our own. But I went back to that moment when I rewatched it this week, because I'd seen it since then. But when I rewatched it this week, I'm like, I remember how I felt the first time I saw the scene. It gets the mind working already, and anytime that you can get the wheels turning in the mind immediately off the rip, I think you're doing a good job. If that's what you're intending to do, if you're trying to be a smart movie, if you're trying to provoke thought, then if you can do it in the first few scenes, then you've done your job. We see what a perfectionist he is when we see him at his job, and you see how meticulous he is with cleaning up everything and being so tidy. We don't really know at this point why he's this way. We saw him put the fingertip on, or the blood in the fingertip, but we don't know why he's this way still. And I think that it just shows, it does a good job of setting the tone early, letting you know like how important and how serious whatever it is he's mixed up in. It lets us know how serious it is. I do like the line he said about, I was conceived in the Riviera, not the French Riviera, the Detroit kind. And then it shows his parents in the back of a Riviera car. Like, I thought that was fantastic writing right there. You could tell they were just in the moment and they were in love and how perfect everything was. But I think it also does a great job when he goes on to explain how this is not really how kids are made anymore. And he's one of the last of a dying breed. And then we get to the delivery room, and he's birthed, and his mom's like, his name's Anton, and the dad's like, no, Vincent Anton. And then we go on to see that they conceive a family the new accepted norm way, and they pick the best of the best. They're like, okay, this is a son that's worthy of my name. Like, it's kind of like that goes on current day, even without all this crazy science getting involved. Parents, have a kid that they feel like, oh, there's something wrong. There's a chance something's wrong. And then you see another kid be born, and you're like, nope, this is the one that's going to be Junior. This is the kid that's got my name. And so it really just drives home all the uphill battle that Vincent is going to have to face throughout his life. And I think this set of scenes, this opening set of scenes, is phenomenal. It does a great job of setting the backstory, of setting the tone for what Vincent's going to have to overcome if he's going to go to space, if he's going to do all these things, if he's going to outlive his 30.2 years life's expectancy, all that. So I think this is a great set of scenes to establish all that.
Yeah, something else it does, it lays that initial, just like I said, that ground level for what the story is. It really encapsulates the original poster from 97, where there is no gene for the human spirit. It's the tagline. Man, this set of scenes really sets that up very nice, because you see just how determined he is to overcome his lot in life. Like, he's given a bag of shit, and we got to turn it into flowers. You know what I mean? And so I really think that tagline starts right here in the opening set of scenes. So just a great job of just setting up some backstory, man. I mean, I really think this opening set of scenes. Also, when we finally get to Ethan Hawke, it's just, he drops right into that character. You don't almost forget that it's Ethan Hawke. Sometimes you watch a movie with a really well-known actor and you're like, it's that actor, and that's just the way it is. And please don't say anything, Dustin, but sometimes I get like that with Brad Pitt. I was like, this is Brad Pitt, and I love Brad Pitt. But sometimes I watch a movie with him and I'm like, this is Brad Pitt playing Brad Pitt. Okay. But in this movie, I forget I'm watching a young Ethan Hawke. Like, it's just like he drops right into the character of Vincent. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. I thought that was great.
That's what I try to tell y'all. This movie is one of the movies I had in mind when I was trying to tell y'all that if he were cast as Brad Pitt in 7, he would have taken it to another level. But anyway.
Brad Pitt was great in 7. I was not referring to 7. He plays a very, very, very different character in that movie.
Glorious Bastards is his best role. But
listen, ain't no doubt about that. Lieutenant Aldo Rain's the man.
This movie does a great job of, a lot of times people don't take into account the human will, the will to survive, the unknown. Like everybody, statistical anomalies do occur. And so when you're talking about, oh, science says this, you can't explain miracles. And if you don't believe in miracles, you can't explain the anomalies that occur when things happen that statistically shouldn't. And so I think this movie does a great job of exploiting that, and this set of scenes is what lays the baseline for that.
All right, I'll just say the first set of scenes was kind of the hardest to take scene by scene on, because it was hard to, like, where do I start? Where do I stop? Ethan Hawke's just giving his narration of his life. It's like, damn, I don't want to stop here because then it just might mess y'all up. But opening set was pretty difficult to just take notes on and do it justice. Vincent now gets a red button on his blood test, and we see him doing hanging crunches, training his ass off. The best test score means nothing because of his blood test. He resorts to more extreme measures now. The German, Tony Shalhoub, asks how he hears of him and takes his height and asks of any distinguishing marks. He tells Vincent the commitment is binding. For the genetically superior, success is easier to attain, but not guaranteed. There's no gene for fate. Sometimes a member of the elite falls. The German tells him his credentials and life expectancy is impeccable. We see Jerome now, who is in a wheelchair. No one knows he broke his back. Blood is the only passport you need. The process of becoming Jerome begins. We see Vincent getting his eyes corrected and his teeth whitened and his hair cut. The only issue is his height. They question his seriousness, and we now see him laid on the ground post-surgery of his legs being lengthened. Vincent says Jerome Morrow is a nice name. Jerome shows him his silver medal. He says he was never meant to be one step down on the podium. So how do you expect to pull this off? He tells Vincent his signature needs work. Jerome says to call him Eugene since he's the new Jerome. Vincent takes his urine sample and tests it, and it comes back hot because he's been drinking. He apologizes he drank a glass of vodka to celebrate. He finally gets a good sample. Vincent tells him it's not too late to back out of this. This is our last day as themselves, and he leaves with the sample. Back to the present, and Vincent passes the interview. He got it. Vincent says he scrubs as much loose skin, nails, hair as he could every day. Vincent paid the rent to keep up with Jerome's lifestyle. He says he's risen quickly in Gattaca. Only one mission director's come close to revealing his true identity. Vincent walks away and we zoom in on a fallen hair. The detectives say we can rule out suicide as they bag up a bloody keyboard. The members of Gattaca watch as they take samples, and Irene is asked to assist the authorities. Vincent asks how this affects the mission. Director says the event is tragic, but the planets keep turning. We see the hair vacuumed up. Vincent tells Jerome he's going up in a week. So soon? Vincent tells Jerome the mission director is dead. Vincent says he didn't kill him, and Jerome says the place will be covered in Hoovers. Vincent and Jerome go to a fancy dinner, and we see Irene snooping through Vincent's desk. Irene slips a piece of paper with a hair in it to be tested. 9.3, quite a catch, she's told. She walks out with the results and tosses them when they say Jerome Morrow. Jerome complains about the wine not breathing enough and says he can't believe he's going up there, you of all people. Vincent asks what he's going to do while he's gone. He chugs his glass of wine. He asks what's Titan like this time of year, and he blows smoke into a glass. He says it's like this all the time. He tells Jerome he should be going up there. His legs wouldn't matter. Jerome says he's scared of heights. All right, go ahead, Brian. That's the next set of scenes I got.
First off, to my guy Ethan Hawke doing the hanging from the door crunches, shit, man was a fucking beast in this movie. And I think this is the first time Thurman has appeared in any of our movies, isn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, so as Mike mentioned, though, shout out to Jude Law. I met him. I met him once when he was in Pensacola because he was actually having a child with a model from Pensacola, Samantha, I think was her name, and I happened to run into him at the hospital. But anyway, nice guy. But as far as he's concerned, you get this character here in Jerome, and you think he's going to just be this like secondary character, but he ends up with this arc that, like Mike mentioned, nearly steals the show here. I think I read Johnny Depp turn this role down, and I'm glad. I love Depp, but I can't see anyone else in this role now but Law. I mean, this relationship between Jerome and Vincent here is phenomenal and really the backbone of this movie. And at the start, you get to see the weight of being an invalid and how it affected Vincent growing up and how he's had to fight for everything his entire life. But through Jerome now, we get to see it from the other side as well, where I mean, like the Valids have this extreme almost weight of these expectations and how they can't fail. I mean, you see Jerome after his accident has nothing to live for, and he's essentially useless in his eyes and really society's eyes. That burden of perfection, as they call it in here, and holy shit, I mean, that's deep as fuck. I just think that's amazing writing. And okay, so just kind of a funny thing regarding this lift scene where Vincent has to undergo that procedure to become 6'1". A little tidbit: in real life, both Ethan Hawke and Jude Law are both 5'11". So, but that scene coupled with the few after the including the scene with the vodka piss that made me laugh. But you get to see them bond pretty quickly, and it doesn't feel rushed or forced to me personally. And on top of all of this, which on its own would be enough, I think you also get this, who killed the director subplot here as well. And I think it does a great job of not only adding a little mystery for the audience, since we know the truth with Vincent, but it also helps add another wrench in the plan and ups the tension of the movie as well. I mean, you want Vincent to succeed, so you're feeling each little drop of hair or skin, like almost almost getting caught with him, I think. And just lastly, another little cool visual aesthetic that Nickel threw in here was a staircase at Jerome's apartment. It resembles a helical structure like DNA. So I thought that was an awesome little subliminal touch, I thought.
Yeah, man. So to me, this set of scenes belongs to Jude Law's character. Like, I just think he steals the show. And I'll be honest, partially he's one of the GOATs because he's named after a great song by the best band of all time. I'll leave that on the table. Let that breathe a little bit. Yeah. All right. Anyway. So he is great. He's great in this film. I really like the set of scenes, partially because we really get into the meat of it here, man. It's the setup for just like asking that question. What would you do in this situation? Would you risk all of this just to kind of get to the next level of life? Because, like we kind of talked about in the first set of scenes, Vincent has this set path on his life, and he's willing to hire Tony Shalhoub, my man, Mr. Monk, to kind of come in and make him a new person. And I love the story. I love the story of Jerome, the real one anyway, where he's genetically superior in every way. He's taller. He's got better genes. He has it all. And somehow that still doesn't lead him to a life of excellence. As we learn, he gets the silver medal. He gets, he walks out in front of a car. All that stuff has a problem with his legs. And I think that's what makes this scene so strong to me. It's just learning that, what Jerome, the real one, has gone through. I love their interaction. I think the trepidation by both at first, and then you kind of see, it gives both of them, it gives one hope and it gives the other some purpose. And I think those two going together really works. I think the scene where they basically have to make Ethan Hawke taller is funny. If this were a horror movie, they definitely would have shown that in an excruciating way. But I think, just him having to become a new person, very interesting scene. The line about there being more vodka in this piss than piss is great. I think it's awesome. Jerome saying he's afraid of heights, which is why it wouldn't work, is me. Like, yeah, man, all that sounds great, except for I'm not going up in the fucking spaceship. Not even a little bit. Because I am also afraid of heights. I can fly on an airplane, but that's about it. So again, just a great character set of scenes. We're getting into the meat of the story. And now it doesn't, again, to me, this is a set that just kind of moves the plot along. We're learning some of the people that are involved, but I think that as far as stuff that happens, it's a little bit of a slow burn. So I get Nico's criticism, I guess, at it being an hour and 45. But to me, after this set of scenes, the hour 45 flies by. Like the rest of this film from here on out kind of just zooms by. I forget that I'm even I don't look at the watch. I don't look at the clock. Like, I just feel like after this set of scenes is where you really just forget that it's an hour and 45. And that's not a very long film to me either. And, I'm a stickler for that 90-minute, that sweet spot, that hour and 30. But some stories can't be told in an hour and 30. And so I'm willing to forgive it here. But again, really good set of scenes. Love just everyone's performance in this one.
Yeah, so I mean, I like that we get the introduction to Tony Shalhoub. I think Tony Shalhoub is one of the more underrated actors in the industry. I mean, he does a great job in any role that he's given, really. Whether it be Men in Black, whether it be Monk, whether it be 13 Ghosts, I think that he bodies every role that he's given. We get the introduction to Jude Law. I think that dynamic between Jude Law and Ethan Hawke is so important to the success of this movie, and they crush it. We also get, I like when he's telling him, just call me Eugene. Of course, Eugene is the name, which means well-born. And so Eugene is, and then it comes from the Greek meaning well-born. And then eugenics is the study of perfecting the hereditary traits passed down between generation to generation. So I think that's a very symbolic name that they chose. Everything about this movie is very intentional. And I love that they had him go by Eugene, because he is, other than his legs not working because of an accident, he is superior. He's perfect. Speaking of being perfect, Mike, you mentioned that he's genetically superior. And when you said that, I in my mind, I hear Eugene telling Vincent, they say all men are created equal, but you look at me and you look at Vincent, you see that statement's not true. See, normally if you go on one-on-one with the wrestler, you got a 50-50 chance of winning, but I'm a genetic freak and I'm not normal. That's Scott Steiner. I could not stop myself from hearing that when you said,
holler if you hear me.
I like when we get to the director's death. I like the gore that we get from the keyboard. They could have very easily just done that off scene and not shown us anything, because this movie, has a lot of other visually stunning scenes, and so they could have just not shown us anything and just told us that the director's dead. But I like that they show it, and then they even go so far as to zoom in and show the keyboard fitting into the groove that's inside of his head, and even the coagulated blood looked good. So I think that was very well done, to be honest with you. I almost wish that they hadn't shown us the eyelash. Don't show us the eyelash on the ledge when he walks off. Don't even show us the eyelash getting vacuumed up, because it would have, added to that, wait, how do they find it? Added to the tension once they're sequencing all the DNA and all the stuff collected. If it popped up, invalid, and then they pull it out and be like, "Hey, we found this eyelash." I don't know. That's a very minor nitpick, but I think that was one of those things they didn't have to do, because we've seen he's been so careful with the way he even put the actual Jerome's hair on the comb. He's very careful about anything, so it almost would have made us even more uneasy to know that he wasn't careful enough, and they found this without us seeing it. I do like how Irene found she's snooping his desk and found the hair on the comb and had him tested just to find out, oh, you're as perfect as they say you are, and then some, or whatever it was she said. I like that set of scenes. I wish they hadn't shown us the eyelash. For some reason, that bothered me. Honestly, the star of this movie, though, is the chemistry that we get between Jude Law and Ethan Hawke. I think that just, think about that. You're taking over this guy's life. This guy's giving you the life you've always wanted. But at the same time, he has nothing to live for anymore, so he's going to get drunk and he's going to do his own thing. That's why I also, the hot piss test, the alcohol or the vodka, this is more vodka than it is piss. That scene, I was like, yeah, I get that. You're going to take over my life? You're going to be me? I'd probably be an alcoholic too at this point. But another good set of scenes to advance us to where we're going. And I agree with what you said. I think, Mike, you said it. I get it. It's an hour 46 minutes, but after this set of scenes, it kind of like the pacing really picks up, and it's like boom, 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 boom. We're getting there.
Two more quick
All right.
things that I think.
Go ahead.
Two more quick things, Nico, that I think help the movie kind of cruise along after this. One, you basically get an investigative murder plot to go along side by side with the plot of what we've already established. I think that kind of help moves the narrative along. I like those two kind of plots going the same direction, but they're not clashing into each other until later. I really like that. Two, I love this character that Uma Thurman plays because at this point in the movie, she's very stoic, very dry, almost robotic, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Now we get more on her later, but I do think here in this part of the movie, she's very. I love the character because it's so different from the frantic nature that we've seen out of Vincent and Jerome so far. She's just very matter of fact. And now she opens up later, but I love just that yin and yang that we have early in the film.
All right, Vincent and Jerome are back home, and Vincent puts the car on charge while Jerome is vomiting. Jerome jokingly offers to save some. He keeps apologizing, and Vincent picks him up and lays him in bed after they fall to the floor. Jerome confesses to walking in front of the car when he became paralyzed. He tells them he's proud of Vincent. We now see doctors researching the victim's head, and Irene comes across an invalid sample. Jerome works out for 20 minutes. Irene is excused from the treadmill, and Vincent jumps on it with his special heart monitor. A detective says the sample came from a janitor who disappeared many years ago. Hugo walks away after not being taken seriously. Hugo tells the director we have a suspect, and they show him his picture. They ask him about his recruitment process. Vincent keeps running as the director talks to the detectives. Vincent's heart rate begins to rise rapidly, and he rips his heart monitor off and walks off and collapses in the locker room. Irene is asked if she had an alibi. She says she was alone and walks away. Vincent joins Irene as she watches a rocket launch. He says it's awful what happened to the director. She says he threatened to cancel the mission, and he should be thankful. They have a suspect. It's an invalid. She says she read his profile. Irene reveals she has unacceptable likelihood of heart failure, and she can't leave Gattaca to go into space. She tells him to take a hair sample and says, if you're still interested, let me know. He says the wind caught it, and they walk off. Vincent is at his computer and grows nervous when he sees the invalid picture. He confirms to the director of the path they'll be taking. Back to Jerome's, and he's snapping on customer service for his hair dye being wrong. Vincent says he can't stay here. They think I killed the director. They found his eyelash, and his picture is posted all over. Jerome says they won't believe their elite suckered them for so long. Vincent pours out the urine samples, and he says he could have rented himself out to someone with a spine. He tells them they're going to find me. When they look at you, they don't see you anymore, only me. Keep your lashes on your lids where they belong. Vincent is back to scrubbing himself and filling up samples. Vincent tells Jerome he's going out since he's getting arrested tomorrow. Jerome tells him to take the glasses off to not look suspicious. Irene honks the car horn to let them know she arrived. She and Vincent listen on as a man plays piano. Hugo and the other detective are following a lead, and he says to Hugo, let's go back to Gattaca and perform random sweeps. Jerome gives a blood sample, and he registers as Vincent. He takes offense when he's called a cripple. He snaps on him, and he walks away from Jerome. The piano player receives a standing ovation, and Vincent catches his glove. Irene takes it and puts it on. Irene and Vincent drive up to car drivers being checked. Vincent pulls out his contacts and disposes them. He comes out valid with his blood test. Irene says she wants to show him something, but folks can't see anymore. They pull over, and he crosses the street dangerously as Irene says, come on, we'll miss it. And I don't know what the hell this was, so Dustin, one of y'all correct me, but I just wrote, Irene takes him to the spot where a bunch of lights are and says his eyes look different. Go ahead, Brian.
It looked like a solar farm to me.
That's what I thought too, but I was like,
solar.
why is that
the way the light was hitting it kind of looked reflective, I guess. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. But speaking kind of along those lines, the electric car aspect here, I think is pretty interesting. I mean, I think Mike brought up and Dustin too, I think, but very relevant today, given the push to that now in 2022. Hell, like you said, back in 1997, that was a pipe dream.
Yep.
All right. So, but here's just another set of scenes with a huge revelation, like where We find out Jerome tried to commit suicide with that car accident, and he's truly now getting to live again through Vincent, which I talked about last set of scenes. I mean, it helps further that arc and that relationship where it's a mutually beneficial relationship, like a symbiosis, I guess, if you will. That's a word I haven't said since Hobbes Middle School, I think, probably right there. Biological symbiosis. But we get that. We get yet another piece of character development, too, this time with Irene. Just yet another layer added here, I think, and not the last revelation that we'll get by a long shot, which is awesome. The murder case, I think, is so interesting as well. Just the thought that, of all the DNA sequences you collected, just because the man is an invalid, he is the murderer. Like, when in reality, the guy didn't even do it. But that's the thought process with these Hoovers, like Great Bane, by the way. But how deep is that? I mean, literally everything is run via DNA. Again, just a thought-provoking statement on society that you could just sit here and dissect and talk about for more than just one podcast. That's for sure. That's what makes this movie so interesting to me, I think. This was so hard to take notes on because I was so caught up in the story and this movie. I had no idea until I made myself stop it here that we still had, an hour left. And I differ from you guys. In my opinion, I think that this hour and 45 flies by, like the whole movie. And again, this writing, lines like, when they look at you, they don't see you anymore. They only see me. The argument between Hawke and Law, I think, was brilliantly acted. And while I said before that I still feel like Sinister is the best performance that I've ever seen him give, Hawke is still brilliant here for sure. I mean, there's just enough big players around him, though. I mean, shit, that's an understatement. Fucking legends around him here, coupled with what I think is brilliant writing, that Ethan Hawke doesn't have to carry this movie like he did Sinister. And we see that on display here. Last thing I'll say is, again, shout out to the brilliant cinematography. The way this is shot at the end of this set of scenes with the flashes between his date and the investigation, where a lot of movies would just probably focus on the date. The buildup of tension as they kind of go through the checkpoint and the blurry point of view shots from his blurry point of view were just phenomenal. Like that whole sensory perception avenue, I think was so well handled. The sound design here with the cars whizzing by, holy shit, I thought that was great. And I bet that was even better in the theater. I bet those 4 people who saw it in the theater were very impressed. Phenomenal set of scenes.
Yeah, this is one of my
Dick.
Hold on, what? Wait, what happened?
He said those 4 people that saw it in the theater.
Well, he's not lying. I mean, this movie, you wait till I get to the money, pal. But anyway, yeah, man, this may be my favorite set of scenes in the film. I just think it sets up so much, and it has tremendous acting work. Just like you said, the electric car, 1997 seems like a far off thing. Here we are in 2022, and it's a real thing. I just saw one today, as a matter of fact, and you can tell when you see one. And I think at some point we'll probably all be driving some semblance of a car that you just plug in. It's very weird to see that as like past future technology. So again, pretty topical as far as the issue goes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin. So you said that you didn't like them leaving the eyelash, and I do get that because it's almost too much of a red herring. Like them doing that in the last set of scenes almost kind of gives it away that it's probably not him that committed the murder. Like you've gotten to know this character, so like that's almost like too obvious, too much of a detail that they kind of give you. But I like that they involve him in this murder plot. Like I like that there's 2 turns of suspense as they get into it. Did he commit the murder, and is he going to get caught, being this other person? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's not that I didn't like they found the eyelash. I just was like, it was unnecessary for us to show it on the ledge before they ever vacuumed it. And it was unnecessary for us to show us getting it getting vacuumed up. Like just they're sequencing all this stuff. Okay. I would just rather it suck something through and say invalid. Because, he's so careful.
Right. And I understand that, but I love that they've wrap these two stories. Now these two stories are kind of starting to cross each other, where you're wondering, will he get caught at the same time he gets caught for committing this murder? Because again, as a first-time viewer, you don't know. Now, the eyelash scene to me kind of gives it away as a little bit of a red herring, but still, you have a little bit of doubt in your mind because he was really wanting to go on this trip. This is his dream. And you're kind of wondering, is he capable of doing something like this to just kind of get to space like he always wanted? It kind of made you question him a little bit. So there's two interactions in this set of scenes that I think is phenomenal. I think Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman play so well off of each other here. They have great on-screen chemistry to me. I feel it. It feels real. It feels like they're really starting to develop a connection, and it's funny because he even says it in the movie where he's like, this is, I've been trying to get away from this damn planet, and now that I'm finally getting away, I have something that makes me want to stay. And you can kind of feel it as it happens. And that character that Uma Thurman's playing opens up, just a little bit. She's so dead set on the genetics and the DNA. And here you have Vincent kind of opening her mind just a little bit, by taking the piece of hair, dropping it, all their interaction there. I think it's great. They play so well together. Another interaction that I think is great is Jude Law and Ethan Hawke right here. When he's nervous about getting caught and he wants to end this thing, throwing the towel, he's throwing away the blood, he's throwing away all the other stuff. That scene is probably my favorite scene in the movie because I do think Jude Law, for not being able to, in this movie, he's handicapped. He cannot move his legs. And so he has to really convey emotion through his arms, through his face. I think he just does such a great job of showing anger, showing sadness, but also, kind of like, man, fuck you. I'm here. You're there. You have a chance to do something with with what I've given you. You better fucking finish the job because at this point, it's the only thing giving his character any kind of hope, any kind of purpose to live. And so, you got to finish. And I love their interaction. And I love everything at this. Excuse me. I love everything at this concert. It becomes a little tense, because again, at this point, you're kind of wondering, are these detectives going to catch him? That's something else I really liked. These two detectives. I love, the actor's name is Lauren Dean, who plays Anton. I think he's great. Kind of an unsung hero of the film. He kind of has to carry a later part of the movie, which is really where I want to give him his credit. But here, his chemistry with Alan Arkin, I think, is really good. The kind of young guy in charge of the old veteran is. I love that dynamic because you could tell that Alan Arkin's character wants to tell him to shove it up his ass, but he doesn't. Not in that way anyway. So again, I love their interaction. I think the two detectives add something to the story. It's funny. Something I did not notice upon first viewing. I'm not going to lie. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but the disposal of the contacts and then him running across the street blind as a bat, it's not something I just caught on the first viewing, until they said it later in the movie where she goes, "You couldn't see, could you?" I honestly did not pick up on that the first time, so you have to forgive me for either A, not paying attention or whatever, but I love all of the stuff with him and Uma Thurman. I think they just come off the screen as a couple I could see ending up together, and I love when that happens. It's not forced; it feels real. And again, we get some layers to the character that Uma Thurman's playing. So, in a former life, a co-host on this show may have told Uma Thurman a certain catchphrase. That co-host will not be doing that this evening, but just know it's being thought about. Anyway, back to you, Nico. Or go to you, Dustin.
Keep my goat's ex-wife's name out your. Anyway, this is as good a time as any, though. I mean, you touched on the chemistry they have. Honestly, if y'all said this, I may have zoned out. But Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke actually began dating while making this film. Then they married the following year in '98 and got divorced in '05. Had a couple kids along the way. So, yeah, I don't think it's by mistake that they had such great chemistry. I also wrote, though, Electric cars, what a novel concept. That's the direct quote that I put in my notes because, in 97, it was such a foreign, like a wild, far fetched idea that people be driving and then pull over and plug their car up. And then the sounds that the electric cars were making as they go up and down the road, like, my, how far we've come in really not that long of a time. I like the development, the extra wrinkle they threw us with Jerome being suicidal, because I think that really throws in the that's what I was talking about earlier. So human determination. You can predict all these things. This child has this, and this wrong with it, and has a life expectancy of 30.2 years. This child is absolutely perfect. But what you don't know about this child that's actually absolutely perfect is that they may suffer from mental illness. There may be external factors that are going to cut this life short. And even if it's not mental illness, there's, freak accidents that could happen. And so I think that this wrinkle just really adds to that and adds that extra bit of mystique to the storyline, where no one could have predicted that Jerome would not want to be on this planet anymore because he had everything going for him. So I think that's a great thing that was understated or underappreciated when you're talking about childbirth and the future of a human being. I love Irene's little, plucking the hair and saying, "Here, scan this. If you're still interested, let me know." And I love Jerome saying, "Oops, the wind caught it." I like that, and I love it even more when it comes back around the second time.
Yeah.
Because it was so predictable, but it was one of those moments where, like, as an audience member, as a watcher, you're like, hell yeah, I'm glad this worked out the way I was hoping it would. Yeah. But I think that was a great touch there to show that he's not interested in her because she's perfect, because he himself knows he's not perfect. And we get the same thing later. So that was great. I do like the concert, the 12-fingered musician. That's just another glimpse into how eugenics are going to go in this future, because they're like everything is by design. So here's a person who was genetically engineered to be the best musician possible. 12 fingers, unreal. So I that was one of those things that my chemistry teacher, Coach Collins, he was the girls basketball coach at Loudon High School when I was there, and chemistry teacher. It was one of the things that he pointed out to us when we watched this movie was, he paused it right there and went on a little spiel. So that's a good point. I like that. That's just showing you how things that can be seen as disabilities, if they happen naturally, if they're designed that way, can be seen as an advantage. And so it's all about perspective sometimes. But lastly, I too, Mike, the first couple times I saw this movie, actually, I missed the whole contact thing, him disposing of the contacts. And I was like, what the hell? Is his Professor Clump's juice wearing off? Is he turning fat again? Like, his eyes are wearing off. What's happening here? I thought this was a
sermon
situation. Oh, sorry. But then upon a few other rewatches, like, I get that, but I think it's a great touch also. Like, it just shows it adds to the tension that we get. This man is willing to risk life and limb for this lie that he's living. He can't tell her, no, I can't see, let's just go. He doesn't want to risk the persecution and possible sentencing that he's going to face if they find out he's a fraud. He's got to play Frogger across the interstate here. So another great set of scenes. And Brian, what you said earlier, how you don't feel like you feel like the whole hour 45 minutes flies by. That's not what I meant when I said that from that set of scenes earlier. I didn't mean that it drug before then, but it's just like from here on, I think I was so engulfed with this storyline that I'm like, it just felt like I didn't even have time to pay attention and try to break things down because stuff's happening and I'm so intrigued.
Right. Yeah, and actually in this set of scenes, there was a deleted scene that shows that Caesar knows the whole time and kind of covers for him. And I know it's implied here some, but I'm glad they left it out. Like I liked how they ended up doing it here.
Or Hugo gets a matching saliva sample to the eyelash. Hugo says we take blood from the vein on all the employees. Hugo says it's only a matter of time, sir. Vincent gives a blood sample and jumps up in pain, acting as if the doctor hurt him. He came up valid as Jerome Morrow. He tells Irene he leaves in 2 days, and she smiles at him. Hugo says we should test again, and the director says we will not interrupt operations anymore. Hugo calls out the director and his possible motive against the late colleague. Hugo says let's start making the rounds. Jerome is preparing more samples for Vincent. We see Vincent and Irene at a fancy jazz club. She asks him about what heart problems he ever had. He asks her if she'd like to dance. The two begin to dance and they smile at each other. Vincent says, you work so hard to get away from a place. Then when it's time to leave, you find a reason to stay. She tells him a year isn't that long, and they go to kiss, but then Hugo interrupts them all, saying not to leave. Everyone leaves, and they take cups to collect samples. And Vincent knocks this guy out trying to stop them, and he and Irene take off running. Irene falls over, and Vincent helps her up, and they hide away. Hugo gets a sample from the attack guy. The other detective yells out the name Vincent over and over. Irene asks, who's Vincent? She says, don't say anything. The two kiss passionately now. We see the two now in bed making love in a room near the ocean. Vincent finds a hair on his pillow and leaves the bed. Irene awakes as well. We see a naked Vincent scrubbing himself on the beach with rocks. Irene washes her face and asks what happened about the scars on his legs. He says he walked into a fender, and she asks if he uses that all the time or if he just made it up. She says she knows he has something to do with the director's death, and he denies it. We see Vincent on an arrow trim, and yes, I Googled that because I did not know what it was called. And Irene walks in on the director and the detective investigating Vincent's desk. Irene tells Jerome he doesn't look well and for him to go home. The detective asks Irene if she knows how to find him, and she says he's ill, but then asks to show him where he lives. Hugo performs other tests, and the detective and Irene get in the car to visit Vincent. He says, you don't know who he really is, do you? Vincent tells Jerome he has to be himself today. He's homesick because the detectives are paying a visit. We see Jerome climbing up the stairs now as Irene and the detective drive to the house. Irene rings the doorbell and Jerome keeps climbing up the steps. Jerome answers their calls and climbs onto his chair. He dusts himself off and crosses his legs. Hello, sweetheart. Where's my kiss? He asks Irene. Glad you're feeling better, and she kisses his lips. He asks why he's here. Detective takes a blood sample and it comes up valid. Who are you expecting? He asks the detective. Detective walks away and goes down the stairs. Detective gets a call. They've got him in custody, and he runs out saying he's on his way. Vincent walks up the stairs and asks each other how they're doing. Irene walks out and Vincent stops her and tells her his name is Vincent and he's the same person he was yesterday. He's a faith birth and not a murderer. She calls him a godchild and he says we have something in common as he brings up his heart condition. They share a gaze and she walks away. The detective gets back to Gattaca and Hugo has the director in custody. His saliva was in the dead man's eye. If he misses this launch, he won't see the next one. He'll be dead. And the detective walks out the room. And the next set of scenes are the ending. Go ahead, Brian. And I just want to clarify, I've been calling the detective just the detective because it's kind of a plot twist too. The detective is in the next set.
Right. It, look, just another phenomenal set of scenes. I loved the tension with taking the blood and the obviously real life chemistry, like you touched on with Ethan and Uma. I mean, which by the way, the choice by Nickel to shoot that sex scene upside down, it gave the whole thing just another touch of uniqueness that I loved. Now, the irony that Vincent can't even enjoy the lovemaking without worrying about leaving skin and DNA around, I mean, that's just a whole nother story. But and not to bring up the obvious here, but I mean, look, we've all had sex before. Look, my guy, you've got a little more to worry about in that regard than a hair on the pillow and needing to shower in the ocean. Look, just throwing that out there. But I mean, it did make for a cool visual, but it didn't really make a whole lot of practical sense there, in my opinion. But fuck that, because we got phenomenal tension building set of scenes here with the investigator, whom we don't know just yet, headed to Jerome's place, and my guy has to climb up the staircase like a fucking boss. Like, this is where Law finally gets his time to shine. I love seeing all of this play out here as Irene finds out. But you think that and the murderer's identity are really the only revelations left to play out. And bam, there's another one. That, I mean, if you've been paying attention, you probably put together. But if you were too entranced in all of these other threads, I mean, shit, there's still one more big one left to play. So many amazing lines, including Vincent's speech to Irene as he comes clean. I will say that a little nitpick of mine, though, was another part of the movie where I felt like the soundtrack overpowered the scene a little bit. Another little fun fact I think plays well here too is that the ID photo of Jerome that's used all throughout is actually a digitally morphed version of the faces of Ethan Hawke and Jude Law. So I thought that was a fun little tidbit. That's really all I had in this set of scenes. I love that this movie has so many threads, so many possibilities of outcome that you can't help. I mean, I can't help but be entranced and very eager to kind of find out how it plays out. I mean, so many times I felt this way, and but the movie disappoints me in the end, like when they couldn't stick it in from the end zone from the 1 yard line. This one doesn't, and I'm excited to get to it.
Yeah, love the set of scenes as well. I love how they, when they're at the dance and all the tension that kind of breaks from there, or I say the dance, they're out dancing, and all the tension kind of breaks from there. And one person I think shines in this set of scenes is Uma Thurman. Just her facial expression, delivery here, her not fear but confusion. If we were in her shoes, that's exactly how we would feel. I think, here's this guy, you're falling for him. You think he's like this perfect specimen. And you're kind of wondering, is he involved in this murder? Who the fuck is Vincent? Like I really love that lead up, that build up there. I think it's really good. She tells him not to say anything and they still kiss. So there's obviously still something there. Here's something else though. What a fucking bedroom or living room she has. That glass wall right up on the ocean. Get the fuck out of here, bro. But also, that's going to be real bad come hurricane season. And hurricane season ain't over. So I'm just saying, that's not a great living choice. I know they're in a different place. But if a hurricane ever rolled through there, that would be... The hurricane season was over. No, I'm saying, if a hurricane rolled through there, she can forget about it, pal. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know if this world in this world the hurricanes don't exist. Maybe science has figured out how to stop weather patterns. I don't know, but it feels like it looks really cool. It looks like the movie Smart House on the Disney Channel when you could turn the wall to the ocean. But I feel like it could be really bad in the morning. Now,
to be fair, in Tallahassee, hurricanes don't exist. So
go Noles. But I actually like the thing with the hair on the pillow because to me it's just another step in the fact that it's just a good character development moment where he realizes, man, I'm getting loose with this thing. Like I've dropped an eyelash, I've left hair on the pillow. Like I've started to not care as much about this trip as I originally thought I did when this whole thing started, and obviously now listen, Brian assumed they made passionate love, but I want to be very clear. They could have had a Heather and Oz night and just had a really good time with some snuggles and some kisses. There's nothing wrong with that. But, I'm not going to lie. The scene where my man Ethan is showering in the ocean, scrubbing his skin, popped me big. I thought that was really funny for some reason. I don't know. But there's not a whole lot of things funnier than a man's ass. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. Man ass is funny. It's just the truth of the matter. Okay. But no,
it kind of made me think of the scene where Ace Ventura is scrubbing himself in the shower after kissing Lieutenant Einhorn. So
a little bit different. But same,
Nico, that's from the movie Ace Ventura.
Oh, hey, we're not bullying Nico today.
Respectfully.
Same but different is what I'll comment there. But again, you get all the stuff here with Anton, and I think the Jude Law, this is where he freaking kills his role. That acting, and it may have been a stunt guy, I don't know, but the way they shot him climbing up the spiral staircase, set with them driving up to the house, I think it's really good back and forth. I love the way that he decides to play that off. Even gives Uma Thurman a kiss, which I'm sure creeped her out, but she had to play along with it. I love all that. I love the discovery of this is the director that of this mission that ends up kind of killing the old guy there. Part of me, again, they did a really good job of making me second guess myself on, well, did Vincent actually commit this murder? It makes sense. His DNA is there. He wanted to see the mission and he knew that it could be cut, all that other stuff. But again, it makes more sense to have it be him 1000%. I just love the set of scenes. I think it's very tense for two reasons. You have the discovery of who Vincent is, and you have the solution of who murdered this man. And so I think one thing gets wrapped up real neat, and now we have to explore in the last set of scenes everything else. And I think it does a really good job of that going forward.
Yeah, so I think this set of scenes is a great set of scenes for tension purposes. I mean, up until here, we had the tension, with the whodunit aspect of it. But now it feels like Jerome or Vincent, whatever you want to call him, it really feels like he's coming to the end of his plank. He's running out of room to maneuver here. And as a viewer, I don't feel like he did it. But like you said, Mike, it's kind of the groundwork's there. Like, wait, did he do it? I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, we didn't see it, and we've been along with him on this journey. We hope that he didn't do it, but anyway, this set of scenes just does a great job of building that tension. I do like the set of scene or the optic of Irene seeing what's going on and tipping him off, like you don't feel well, go home, because despite what's transpired between the two of them, I still don't trust her at this point. I still have my sneaking suspicion, and maybe it goes back to when she had his DNA tested or whatever, or sequenced, whatever she called it. I don't fully trust her, but I think that she's out to get him. And for her to turn around and be like, hey, you don't feel good, go home. And then for her to walk in and be like, he didn't feel good, he went home. I thought that was huge. And then the commitment that we see. Well, first of all, Jerome's commitment in climbing those stairs. Yeah, you just have to take me to prison or whatever you're going to do, because if I'm, if I'm paralyzed, I don't have it in me, boss. I'm not that guy, pal. I'm not going to climb a spiral staircase on my elbows just to protect another man's identity or my own whoever's. I don't care. I'm paralyzed. What do I have to lose at this point? I'm already suicidal and paralyzed. Like, I'm done at this point. So shout out to him for doing that. But, it further goes to Irene's character development and the sense that, okay, I can trust her here, because when Vincent calls her and it's like, hey, you got to be you, or, act like everything's cool. And then she walks in the house, and just the commitment, it's so awkward between her and the real Jerome. She's never seen this man. She just walks in and he's like, give me a kiss. And they go for it. Like, they didn't have a choice. And the commitment that they showed was great there. The only nitpick that I have really it's not the only nitpick I have, but one of the biggest nitpicks I have is the revelation of who did it. When we get that it was the director that killed him with the keyboard, because honestly, like, that was so predictable, because it was questioned earlier in the film.
Yeah, if they
And
hadn't
this guy's
questioned it, I think they hadn't. I wish they hadn't questioned it as well. Like,
yeah,
I
exactly.
think that
Like,
would have
this
been
guy's
better.
he's a semi-minor character, and then he's talking about this, that, and the other, and the Hoovers said, what about you? He wanted to cancel your mission, right? You didn't want him to cancel your mission. If they hadn't done that, because that planted the thought right there, well, what if it was him and it turned out to be him? Like, that was a huge letdown. Like, a huge letdown. Now, ultimately, the movie still is great without that, because that was just a subplot. But it was just one of those things I really wish they had done differently, because of, it did take something away.
I wish it had been Irene personally. Like I just felt
That
like we needed to see
honestly,
more.
I thought about. I wish I would have even been okay with him not finding out who it was. I
There you go.
don't need to
Yeah,
know who did it
you're right.
because that's not the focal point of the story.
Exactly.
That death was just a consequence. That was just a coincidence. That was something that happened along this story arc of Vincent. And I don't need to know. But the fact that they hinted at it and then it turns out, hey, we laid this Easter egg earlier, and did you pick up on it? It was him. I didn't need that. It kind of took away from it, but still a good set of scenes though for what it was because it's tense. You can cut the tension with a butter knife at this point.
All right, y'all. Here's the ending. Vincent carries Jerome back downstairs, and Jerome says, "I think she likes us." Vincent says he has to meet the cop. Vincent walks to his desk and sees the cop sitting there. He calls his name and says, "My God, you have changed." The cop reveals he is his brother Anton. He asks why is he here, and Vincent says he has a right to be here. Anton says he's committed fraud. Vincent asks if his success is only in his failure. Vincent says, "I don't need any rescuing, but you did once." Anton says, "You didn't beat me that day. I beat myself." "Want me to prove it to you?" he asks. The two men are at the beach now, and Anton takes off swimming. Vincent chases after him. Anton calls out Vincent's name and asks, "Where's the shore?" and says they're too far out. Vincent asks, "You want to quit?" and he says no, and they keep swimming. "How are you doing this, Vincent? We have to go back." "We're almost to the other side," Vincent says. He tells Anton, "You know how I did it? I never saved anything for the swim back." Vincent saves the drowning Anton and swims back to the shore as he stares into the night sky. We see Irene asleep in her car, and she sees Vincent in her side mirror. She asks, "You couldn't see the night you crossed the street, could you? But you did it anyways." He pulls out a hair sample and gives it to her, and she drops it, saying the wind caught it, and the two are in bed again. Jerome says, "You're flying today. Look at the mess you're in." He has 2 lifetimes of samples for him. Jerome says he's traveling too. Jerome says, "I only lent you your body. You lent me your dream." Jerome hands him something and says, "Not until you're upstairs." Vincent is back to work, and the doctor says there's a new policy. He tells Vincent his son is a big fan of yours. His son wants to apply here. He tests the urine, and it comes up is it invalid or invalid? It's one. I keep messing that up. Sorry, guys. He says for
Invalid.
future references, right-handed men don't hold it with their left. The doctor says you'll miss your flight, Vincent. He lets him get away with the failed test. Vincent boards the flight, and we see Jerome climb into the furnace with his metal killing himself. We see Vincent on the rocket, and he opens the card and sees bits of hair. For someone who was never meant for this world, I must confess, I'm suddenly having a hard time leaving it. Of course, they say every atom in our bodies was once part of a star. Maybe I'm not leaving. Maybe I'm going home. And the film ends with a shot of the starlit sky. All right, Brian, that's the ending. What did you think?
I think it stuck the landing. I loved it. To start out with, Hawk is phenomenal in this set of scenes with Lauren Dean, who I loved in Space Cowboys. He was also in Apollo 13, and of course, Say Anything is good old Joe. But Ethan Hawke tearing up while delivering the line, now even you will tell me what I can and can't do now. I just thought it was so damn powerful. Like the shots in the water mirroring them as kids, that, and then just the whole not so underlying subtext that we touched on earlier, Dustin touched on that message that, no matter what the DNA says, you can't recreate the human drive that's willing to do whatever it takes, that ability to overcome based on just sheer guts. That line, "I never saved anything for the swim back." Fucking great line. Just absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
And with all of that, I even forgot about the whole entire Jerome subplot. And as soon as he shows him the samples, I was like, "Oh yeah, fuck! How is this going to play out?" I mean, and then you realize after all of that, he's still lost, and he takes his own life, which I don't know if I loved or not. I mean, maybe having him die of some disease he never told them about or something. But after all of this, like him taking his own life, just seemed, I don't know. It just, I was like, what the fuck? So, go ahead, Dustin.
Well, what I was going to say is like the reason that I disagree with that, like, no, the disease would have been predetermined, right? Like they would have been able to see that in his genetic code because
I guess that's true. Yeah.
he was genetically engineered. So that's what I was touching on earlier. I like that this movie touches on, you can predict all these things, but his will was not to live. And so I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just I was so just like, and it's real life, you know. I mean, it is. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
just because he accomplished this task doesn't mean that he's mentally still okay. So I get it. You know, I was like, oh damn, like it's my least favorite kill, if you want to call it that. But overall, I love this whole entire movie. Big shout out to, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Slarmir Idziak, who actually was the director of photography. But he did Black Hawk Down, and also Stephen Alesh, who was the lead set designer. I thought just tremendous job all the way around. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this ending is great. Like, I really do think the reveal that Anton is his brother, or that the detective is Anton, his brother. I love that reveal. I think it's done so well. You can almost see it coming on a rewatch. Uh, I mean, obviously, but if you really pay attention, the scene where he's kind of flipping back and forth, and the ones before this between the two pictures, you can kind of go, oh, maybe he knows him. Maybe that's why he keeps going back and forth. So again, I love that reveal. I love the emotion from Ethan Hawke here, where he clearly this has been something that sticks in his side. His brother being the quote unquote perfect child is his motivation. Them not really, or either Ethan Hawke pretending not to recognize him or whatever, but them not really even recognizing each other is interesting to me. It just kind of goes to show you what you can do with, like, putting someone else's blood and, the skin and the hair and all that other stuff. I just think that was a really interesting twist. I love that. I love their swim here in the ocean at night. It just kind of goes to show you what this movie's trying to say, which is you could be perfect as you want to be genetically. There's no, no way to kill the human spirit, the human drive, as we've talked about. And I think another way is right here with the guy that's been giving him his piss test this whole time. His son, genetically modified, done the way that it's supposed to be done, and he has problems. And so there really is more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. And I love that they include that in there because he looks up to him because he's someone with problems. And this guy pretty much knows the whole time that this guy is not who he says he is, that this piss is not his, or that's what I took away from it. I could be wrong, but that's really what I gathered was this guy's not just figuring this out for the first time. So I really like that as well. And I'm indifferent on how they ended Jerome's life here. I think it was sad because it's a character I eventually was rooting for to find new purpose, to find some drive to live, and to realize he's killing himself in that setting is really heartbreaking. It's a character we got to know, that we got to like, even though he's rough around the edges. And I think that was a sad way to see him go, but not everything can be a happy ending. And I love that, again, I love that he opens the thing of hair on the plane. And I just love that I didn't save anything for the swim back. Great quote, great line. It's perfect. I just think this ending is really good. And I feel like I didn't have a whole lot of negative to say about a film for the first time in a very long time. And that's okay. Sometimes it's fun to kind of get in there and, say some negative things. But overall, I couldn't find a whole lot that I didn't care for in this film. And this ending is no different. Job well done. I think it's great. And I think the visuals, the way the ending is lit with the swim scene, it's dark, but it's just light enough where you can see everything going on. I think it's lit so well. I love the way that scene is shot. But yes, I think they stick the landing, as Brian said, and I'm a really big fan of it.
I think the ending is phenomenal as well. I love the twist that we get, the realization that, holy shit, that's Anton. That's the brother that was good, because I don't think that it was hinted at all. We just thought that this is a Hoover doing his job. This is a detective doing his job, trying to solve a murder. And then we get the realization that, oh, he's been on to him this whole time. When he saw the invalid name pop up, it was bigger than that to him. He wanted to find him because it's his brother. I thought that was very well done. Um, the swimming competition, I loved. Like you guys mentioned, the quote. You want to know how I made it? I didn't save anything for the swim back. Like that's a great life motto. Like you can't be thinking about, you gotta go. If you have a goal, you don't think about how am I going to get back? How am I going to figure things out afterwards? You got to just give it your all in the moment.
It's definitely a future Instagram caption down the road for me.
Absolutely. I love the callback that we get, from Irene here when he hands her the hair and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, the wind caught it." I love that because it was a moment when he did it right. Like he was trying to tell her, like, "Listen, I got issues you don't know about," and now she knows about his issues, and it was just a great moment. I thought the moment between Vincent and Jerome here, I thought was huge when you get to see their kind of goodbye, and he's telling him, "Look, I got you all this piss, I got you all this blood. This will last you 2 lifetimes." You kind of know something's up. But I love the dynamic here. It's just kind of like their goodbye without saying goodbye. I thought it was a great moment. And I also love the doctor just letting him slide because you've seen this great dynamic between this doctor and Jerome or Vincent, whatever you want to call him, throughout this whole movie. You can, and when you see this scene, you pick up on that he's known what's up the whole time. Because earlier in the movie, he tried to tell him, "Hey, I got to tell you about my son," and it kind of got swept under the rug. And now here, he's like, "I never did tell you about my son, did I? He's a big fan of yours." That's letting you know that the doctor knows I know you're not what you say you are. My son looks to you for inspiration because he also has limitations. My son views you as a role model. And I think it's a very touching moment between two humans, not a doctor and a space cadet or whatever the hell his title is here. But I think that was a beautiful moment. And then lastly, Jerome's death. What I was saying is I actually really like it because if you look at Jerome on paper and you look at Jerome's DNA makeup and you look at his probabilities for certain afflictions, it would not show you suicidal tendencies. It would not show you depression. But things happen in life that you can't plan for that will trigger you and send you down these paths that you never were supposed to go down. And that's how I feel like had he not gone through the accident and had he been able to walk, he wouldn't be suicidal. Now, I get it. He walked out in front of the car on his own. He walked in front of the traffic. He was trying to kill himself then, but who knows what he was dealing with at that time to spark him or, to push him down that direction. Things happen in life that you can't really plan for. And at this point, he had everything going for him still. He's still a genetic specimen. But the reality is he was done with life. And so I think that's a great way of showing that just because you have everything going for you genetically or on paper, you can't underestimate how life events make you feel about yourself and your own situation. So I thought it was a very poetic send-off for Jerome and just a phenomenal ending to a phenomenal film.
All right, y'all. Any more final thoughts on the ending before we jump into just our social media comments and questions? All right. The only comments we have is from Instagram. It's from my friend, all of our friends, friend of the show, Bright So Art. He commented, "I never really thought of this as horror, but it's definitely unsettling. I always found Ethan Hawke's role to be inspiring." And he put in quotes, "I never saved anything for the swim back," with the little chef's kiss emoji.
Yes.
That's the only
Shout out
social
Matt
media
County,
comments and
baby.
question we have. For sure. That's the only comments and questions we have. You want to jump into fun facts? I don't have any. I'll let y'all read y'all's.
Yeah, sure. I only have two. Actually, when Gattaca was released as part of a marketing campaign, there were advertisements for people to call and have their children genetically engineered. Thousands of people called wanting to have their offspring genetically engineered, just showing how fucking stupid the general public is. Just throwing that out there. And also, this one's for Dustin. This was actually, we talked about it, and I know Mike's going to touch on the theatrical release a little bit more, but this was actually beaten by Brad Pitt's movie 7 Years in Tibet while it was in its third weekend. Just throwing that out
Hmm. You kind of cut out. I didn't hear that.
there.
I just got two quick ones as well. So, and honestly, I don't remember if one of y'all said this during your breakdown, but I'm going to say it again anyway. NASA scientists actually voted this as the most accurate sci-fi movie ever made. And the last one that I have is the name Gattaca is made of the 4 nucleotide structures GATC, which is guanine, adenine, cytosine, cytosine, and thymine. Yeah, I kind of was a C student in chemistry, so I did my best there. But GATC,
you were pretty damn close, man. You were pretty damn close. Yeah,
you know.
Hey,
And also
Dustin,
shout out to Keeler for what?
Dustin, I had that fun fact, but I cut. I was like, I'm not going to try and read this on the air.
Yeah, honestly, I had it, and I wasn't even going to say. I was just going to say the name Gattaca is made of the 4 nucleotide structures GATC, but I decided to try to pronounce them, and decision regretted.
this movie ended its theatrical run with a domestic total of $12.5 million, while this movie was made for a cool $36 million. So this movie was, in fact, a box office flop. However, has definitely gone on to have a cult-like status after its initial VHS release, and then now it's having a second life on Netflix, as a matter of fact. I saw it today. It's one of the top whatever movies in it. Well, not today because it was still on mine, like my algorithm. But a couple weeks ago, I noticed that it was in the top 10 movies in the USA. So can't be doing too bad. I feel like it's just didn't find its audience in 1997, but it's finding its audience now. But this movie definitely was a flop. There's no beating around the bush about that. For such a star-studded cast, I'm just surprised. I guess the themes of this movie didn't quite hit the same in 97 as it is now in 2022.
The closer we get to a reality that mirrors that or gets closer to that, it gets more and more relevant.
Absolutely.
All right, let's jump into our favorite kill, least favorite kill in the rating. Does anybody in particular want to go first?
I'll go ahead and knock it out since it's my pick. I'll set the bar extraordinarily high for you, Nico. As far as my favorite kill, I went with the director just because, like I said, I do think that the injury to the side of the head looked good. There was a clear indentation there that fit the keyboard, and the coagulated blood looked good. I think that was some pretty good looking fake blood we got. Least favorite kill was Jerome, just because, damn, that one hit me in the feels. It was for what it was, the optics of the death was fine. I think him strapping himself in and getting incinerated was fine, but it's just I didn't want to see him go like that. But as far as the movie goes, like I said, I think this is a very good movie. I think it's well written. I think it's well acted. The casting is phenomenal. Everything about it's really good. The only thing that doesn't hold up to me is just some of the, when you think about 90, it was the same thing with Starship Troopers, like the technology that they tried to portray as, hey, this is the future. It's like, well, now we're in 2022 and damn, these graphics kind of suck on this electronic shit, But other than that, I think everything held up. I think this is a very good movie. I recommend this movie to everyone except for people with the taste that are on the same level as Nico's.
We're not bullying, damn it.
But with all due respect, but like I said, I really enjoy this movie, though. This is a movie that, even with an hour and 46 runtime, I don't feel like it runs that long. I'm definitely going to have this in my rotation from now on. Shout out to Ethan Hawke. He is, without a doubt, a top 3 actor of all time. I gave this movie a 9.25.
Damn.
All right, I'll just go next since Dustin wanted to be a bully. Favorite kill? Honestly, I wrote none, but I mean, I do agree that the directors or whatever the guy's title was, the effects look good, so I'll just give it to him. Least favorite, Jerome, like you, Dustin. It was sad. I like Jude Law in this. He was great in this movie. So this is all I wrote. This is what I would call a good movie, as in it's very well acted and made. However, I get very little entertainment value out of it. I feel like this is 1 hour and 45 minutes of Ethan Hawke doing blood and piss tests and swimming. After 2 watches, I feel like not much happens that justifies the runtime. Anywho, I'm not going to pile on. It just doesn't do it for me. And I gave it a 4 out of 10 for the acting, the cast, which I liked, and some great one-liners.
You said a what out of 10?
A 4 out of 10. If you judge me anymore, I'm going to give it a 3.
All right, I'll go next. Let Brian cap us off here. My favorite kill was the guy that they murdered, whatever his title was, and my least favorite was obviously Jerome, because that's again a very heartbreaking scene. Didn't want to see him go that way. So again, I just think this movie, man, it shocked me how much I liked it. The existential crisis that you have while watching it, the questions it asks, the themes that it plays on, the acting, the stunning visuals, everything to me just hits so well together. And I think that's the reason I like the film is so many moving pieces. This movie definitely has the potential to be bad. Like I just given the fact that it's a little bit of a reach in 97. So some of the stuff they were talking about just on the surface is a little bit of a reach, but when you really dig in, you know the themes, you know what's being talked about underneath. I think it's so topical always. I think it's great. So I gave this movie a flat 9. I think it's that good. I would recommend it anytime. It will be a part of my permanent rotation.
Okay. All right. Well, my favorite kill is the same thing. Director. My least favorite kill is Jerome. Look, the movie was pleasant surprise to me. Like I kind of touched on earlier, it's probably even more relevant today with all of the DNA modification talk, the fears surrounding getting COVID shots, and even on a different level with how social media, where most people mask who they really are. I mean, they always say everyone's life is perfect on Facebook. With Meta coming soon and virtual realities coming to fruition, where people can escape their real lives and become something completely different, something genetically modified. I think this is a very deep, very smart as hell movie. I loved watching it. I gave it a 9.5.
9.5. That gives us a composite score of 7.9375. IMDb, out of 298,000 votes, has a 7.8.
All right.
So we're right there with them.
And we would have been higher if it weren't for someone bringing our average way the fuck down. Jesus. I'm just kidding. It's okay. It's okay.
Hey, it
It's
happens.
Okay. It does. You're right.
And I just wanted to talk on that one more time. Listen, that's just my opinion. Like, who the hell am I in the grand scheme of things? Like, hell, there's a movie that we all know that's one of the most iconic in horror sci-fi history, Alien. It's regarded as, one of the best ever. I think it's boring as hell, so it's just all personal taste. So who am I in the grand scheme of things?
Aliens is fantastic. But anyway.
I agree with you 100%, Mike. Any final thoughts on Gattaca before I shout out our blood donors? And then Brian's going to announce his pick for our new theme next month.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like I said, I was a little iffy on this after I watched it for the first time in a while. And I was like, man, I think this was a bit of a stretch. But then I watched it. I finished watching it, and I talked with Brian a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm glad I picked this. And now that it got such a high score, I'm really glad I picked it, because I picked a movie that Brian and Mike, neither one had seen. And Nico, I know you hadn't seen it, buddy. It's okay.
I never heard of
it. Brian and Mike hadn't seen this movie, and they both ended up liking it. So hopefully our listeners, if you haven't listened or if you haven't watched this movie and you're just tuning in because you support us, first of all, I appreciate you. Second of all, check this movie out. I think you might like it.
Go watch the movie. Go watch this film at least once.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. I mean, it's not hard to access it. So
absolutely.
All right, let's shout out our blood donors. We really appreciate y'all. Our camper level reoccurring is Clayton J, Nina, Michelle Mirza, Andrew Ferguson, Carrie Adams, the Horror Movie Crew podcast, Alex Seligson, Eric Doolittle, and Sean Irwin. Our camp counselor reoccurring are Hunter Nelson, Dennis Kennedy, Edwin Hernandez Gunn, Joe Swinford, Jennifer Davis from the Too Close to Home podcast, Karen and Heather Smith. And I'm going to shout out legendary blood donor Sarah Irwin. We just released her choice of Rubber last week. Definitely
Great
go
movie.
check that out if you want to hear some good laughs. Just want to say sincerely, we appreciate all of our blood donors. Y'all take a big burden off of us. Like, I can't stress enough. I know it's very tough economically right now. Hell, gas and food and utilities is all high as hell. So
Yeah.
anything you can help us with, we really, really appreciate and we don't take for granted. Brian, go ahead and announce your pick. And actually, Mike, you announce your theme, and then Brian can announce his pick. Let's do it that way.
Yes, I went back and forth with a few themes, Netflix month and 90s month, and we'll get to 90s month at some point. But I felt like to kind of, we've had some very particular themes. Like the themes have been very particular within a genre or a certain type of film. And I feel like I wanted to kind of loosen up the theme just a smidge, but still have, something on it. So I went with 2000s theme, which I know is a very hotly debated era of horror. I know we have a co-host on this show that loves it as an era, but I know within the horror community, it's not as well thought of as some of us may like it. And I think that's part of the reason I picked it, because I wanted to find some of the movies that we liked and maybe some of the movies that we hated. And so I'm very excited to talk about it because, again, a very controversial era known mostly for its torture porn and stuff like that. And I'm sure we'll get to that. But yeah, I'm excited, and I'm glad I went with it instead of Netflix month, because there's some stinkers on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. Greatest horror franchise of all time came from 2000s. Go ahead and announce your pick, Brian.
So I've wanted to do this movie for a long time, since we did Silence of the Lambs. Actually, I was struggling between a few movies, but I really didn't want to miss the opportunity to pick this one. It's fantastic movie to me. It's 2002's Red Dragon, the prequel to Silence of the Lambs. I mean, it's got obviously Anthony Hopkins in it, but Dustin's favorite actors: Edward Norton, Ralph Fiennes, Philip Seymour fucking Hoffman, Harvey Keitel.
R.I.P.
It goes on. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, I love this movie, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited, Brian, because I've seen Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal, but this one I've never watched it yet, so I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited for Mike's theme, honestly. I guess he was calling me out, but I'm a big fan of 2000s horror. Hot take is way better than the 90s, but we'll debate that down the road.
I don't think that one's a hot take. It's when you get into the 80s and the 70s that becomes a little bit of a hot take.
No, it's definitely better than the 70s. But anywho,
no.
Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned next week. We got some big things planned, and we really appreciate all the support. Y'all have a good one. Just want to remind everybody,